All right, the NHL playoffs are just around the corner. The 2025 playoff run will begin, and I'm sure it'll be a wild ride. Joining me for this segment is Ross Granato. Now, Ross is a student at Durham College in the broadcasting program. He is a budding sportscaster, and today we're going to talk about the Canadian team's prospects, particularly the Maple Leafs, because I believe this will be the year that we end that drought, which has been around since 1993, since the Canadian team won it. There are some extremely good potential Canadian teams to win this thing outright. And, the Maple Leafs have been close for a very long time. And I think they're just right about to make that big leap. And I think it's going to happen this playoff run. Of course, the Edmonton Oilers are, they went to the Stanley Cup Final last year, and they've been banged up recently, but the Oilers are still the Oilers, and they're going to be a scary foe as well. And the Winnipeg Jets, coming off what's probably almost certainly a President's Cup trophy season. They're on their way to winning that trophy, and a very talented team with a lot of great pieces and very strong goaltending. But I guess we should start with the Maple Leafs. Russ, what are you thinking?
Well, I think, like you said, this year for the Leafs is definitely the year that I think they should be able to take the next step. They made lots of moves both in the offseason and at the trade deadline, and I think that the main factor for the Leafs this year is their defense core, and I believe that it is the strongest it has been in years. Last year they took the Boston Bruins to Game 7 without Matthews and Nylander, and they had Ilya Lyubushkin playing top pair minutes. And that's not to throw shade to Lyubushkin, but the difference is this year they have Brandon Carlo and both Chris Tanev, who are extremely good defensive top four right-handed demon, which is something the Leafs haven't seen in a very, very long time. So I think that if they are to make a deep playoff run, it'll be because of their defense and their new starting goaltender, Anthony Stolarz, who I think should be starting come playoff time.
Oh yeah, nailed it, man. That's perfectly. Those points are all extremely valid. Health is obviously will be a problem. It always is come playoff time. And as you mentioned, Nylander, Matthews weren't at the top of the game last year, and they were injured in that series against Boston, which they came back from 3-1, if you recall. So that was a kind of win in a sense for the Leafs, but. Beefing up that defense is being huge. I mean, Chris Tanev is a shot blocking machine. That guy is amazing, and OEL is a solid defender, as you mentioned. Brandon Carlo, that's a nice piece. They also, bringing in Scott Laughton as the strong defensive center, that gives them a different look that they didn't have before. I thought throughout this season, we've seen some of the players that were, have been role players in the past, kind of recently in particular, rising to the occasion. Like I like what Nick Robertson's doing, for example. Like if you look at, from top to bottom, what this Leafs team has done, the pieces they put in, Brad Treliving has done a phenomenal job of adding pieces to this team, but also, the pieces that they have, it just seems that there's, they've brought it to a different level now, and you take Matthews and Nylander and Marner and Tavares. Tavares is having, almost an MVP season, if it wasn't for some of the guys that he would be facing, but it's certainly, in my opinion, comeback player of the year, no question. And he's having one of the best seasons of his career, taking that C off his chest and giving it to Matthews. Maybe that was part of the deal, helped him to lighten things up a little bit, but to focus on his game and not worry about the outside stuff a little bit. But what that's resulted in is Tavares being a phenomenal player this year. And you mentioned Stolarz, and Wall is a good backup. And even if you go deeper than that, you've got Murray, and you've got the Hildebeest, and you've got some strong pieces all the way through. I don't see how there's nothing that's going to happen to this team that's going to make me say, oh no, because no matter what pieces they lose, they seem to have something to back it up.
Yeah,
Anything you
exactly.
want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I like the point that you brought up with Tavares. He's having a great year, and he's scored the most goals in the season since the first year he came here, which was now 7 years ago, which is hard to believe. Um, but like you said, like I do believe that um, him getting the C off of his chest definitely took some pressure off, and it may not be more pressure towards Matthews, but we've seen Matthews kind of change his game in a way. He's not the 60 goal scorer, 70 goal scorer that we've seen in the past this season, but his all-around game has definitely been changed a lot, and that could be because he's the captain now, and it's also definitely a factor of the Craig Berube playing system. But yeah, like you said, Tavares is definitely an X factor for the Leafs, and I think that he'll be able to carry it into the playoffs. And even in past playoffs, like he was the one who ended the first round drought and sent them to the second round. So I think that that'll definitely be a guy that they'll be able to lean on again come playoff time.
Yeah, a similar if you took put some players in that situation, other players in that situation that Tavares found himself in, that you might find them pouting, you might find them, being upset because they got the C taken away. But this guy, he's a different kind of dude. He's not that kind of dude. He's a selfless dude. He's played like way better. That's all
Hmm.
there's the only thing I can say. Play what a bit, and Matthews has handled that pressure well. Now he's got himself playing a lot of minutes shorthanded in shorthanded situations. He's become a real team leader. This is that's been a factor as well. And you touched on Craig Berube. Here's a coach that they have now that has won the Stanley Cup. Not only did he win the Stanley Cup, but he took a team that was dead last in
Yeah.
January, the 2019 St. Louis Blues, and took them all the way to the Stanley Cup Final, and they won it all.
Yeah.
There's the Blues. That's another story. But Berube's a guy who's been there, and his staff seems to be in touch with what he's trying to do. The players seem to be in touch with what he's trying to do. They bought into his system. They bought into they're playing a strong all around game. They're not scoring, lighting up especially down the stretch here. They haven't been lighting it up so much, but they have been one of the stronger defensive teams in the
Yeah.
NHL. And
Mhm.
that's a big factor because come playoff time, you know defense wins championships. We hear that in every sport.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. And I think Brad Treliving has done a great job at building a team for Craig Berube's play style. I strongly believe that every single defenseman on the Leafs is exactly what Berube wants in a player. And same thing with the bottom six, and like maybe not the core four guys, because they get paid to score the goals, but I think the supporting staff for sure that are around them are exactly the type of players that Craig Berube wants. Like, we've seen Matthew Nyes double his goal total this year. He's absolutely broken out. Bobby McMahon scored 20. Scott Laughton, he hasn't been the best since the deadline, but I'm sure he's going to come around. And, even guys like Steven Lorentz, like he's played almost every single game. He plays PK time. And I think that this team is just built for Craig Berube hockey.
Yeah, Steve Lawrence, he's been quite a find, hasn't he? And you know what? I think there was some pressure on Scott Laughton being an Oakville boy, coming into this situation. He's I I can understand why he would feel some of the pressure of playing for the hometown Leafs, the team that he's followed his entire life, and now getting a chance to play for them. That it leaves a little people, some at least so a lot of people will be nervous in that situation. But I
Yeah.
think you'll see as time goes on, Lawton's just a steady, 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 steady player. No matter all his years in Philly, he was absolutely steady, all super dependable guy. And I think that's when push comes to shove, come playoff time, that's going to be the case. And you mentioned Nyes, unbelievable how he's fit into that top line. I mean, just perfectly. And yeah, so I think they got some incredible pieces. The Edmonton Oilers going to be a formidable team. Here's a team that went to the Stanley Cup Final last year, and I think that they've been banged up down the stretch.
Hmm.
McDavid's been hurt, but I don't see that. I don't think that that's a. I don't believe that that's a long term deal. I think it's
Yeah.
like I think that now that the playoffs are here, that I think you'll find that the team is going to be healthy, and that they're preparing for another long run and giving McDavid, this time to rest before that, before things heat up. Probably a good thing, even though you don't want to see players get hurt, but at the same time, if it's an injury that you're going to overcome, look at with Matthew Tkachuk in Florida, same situation. These guys are hurt at a very convenient time.
Yeah.
A few years ago, Tampa Bay, they'd given a lot of their top players a time off down the stretch. I mean, they were hurt, let's face it, but they came back just in that very time. So it's that's when you want the players to be coming back, and as this playoff run continues, it's going to be good. The Oilers are obviously a team that can do it all. Skinner's solid between the pipes, and Pickard, and I don't know what the scenario is with Skinner in terms of, I think he's pretty okay, but Calvin Pickard has been picking up the slack lately too. He's been playing really well for him. So, they got their goaltending set, but their defense does look a little bit better than it did at times last year.
Mm-hmm.
They've adding, they've got some good pieces there, and Ekholm they added last year, but he's been unbelievable. Yeah, so they're prepared for their long playoff run, and the Winnipeg Jets, right? The Winnipeg Jets are like we mentioned earlier, probably going to be the President's Cup trophy winners, and they the only thing I expect a long playoff run from the Jets, and I would even think that maybe even the Jets Oilers, Western Conference Final, it would be a strong possibility. The only thing now, history is not boded well for the Jets, especially in 7-game series.
Mm-hmm.
Is Connor Hellebuck the guy that's going to be able to do it? I mean, if you look back just at the most recent example that we have for Hellebuck is the Four Nations Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hellebuck was extraordinarily good during the round robin. I mean, and he was good too in the final, right? Against Canada. He was beaten by Binnington, who was just unbelievable, right? Yeah. Binnington was unbelievable. Hellebuck was good, but is he the guy that's going to win that big game? And that's the only thing, the only stickling point I have with the Jets is Hellebuck the guy that can get it done when push comes to shove. And maybe he can, and maybe this is the year he proves it. But to me, if I'm looking at the Jets and all the pieces that they have, Kyle Connor and Scheifele and Perfetti, these guys, and adding Brandon Tanev, that was a nice move, right? You can't go wrong with a Tanev on your team, and that's a strong group.
Yeah. I mean, I do think Hellebuck has the potential to definitely be that guy. You're always going to need a goalie that's hot in the playoffs. Otherwise, you're not going to go far. And I think that the Jets, they heavily rely on him. He's their go-to guy. He's probably their best player. And he's got good defense in front of him. It's just sometimes I feel like you can only rely on your goalie for so long, right? We saw Montreal in the finals in the COVID year, and Price was their main guy. He absolutely carried them to those finals, and they got to the finals, and I wouldn't say they fell apart, but they couldn't keep up anymore, and ultimately it was their downfall. And after that, I mean, that was probably Price's last chance to win a cup. Well, it was, and
yeah.
I just feel like you can't rely on your goalie for too long. And like you said, guys like Connor and Scheifele, like they're gonna have to step up and help get some of the weight off of Hellebuck's back for sure.
Yeah, and then if you want to go through the rest of the Canadian chances here, like Ottawa, to me they've been an anomaly. They don't have guys who score a lot of points, but they've got guys who who are hard to play against.
Yeah.
So yeah, the particularly if you think about their Kachuk is a pretty strong player.
Hmm.
Stutzley, he's the one guy who can light it up. But Batherson, Sanderson, Giroux is a strong veteran presence, and that's kind of what they needed for that team. I mean, they could surprise somebody. There's a very good chance that their first round opponent will be the Leafs, and a Battle of Ontario would be a lot of fun.
Hmm.
I don't think they have the pieces to get past the Leafs this time around. They're going to learn a lot from this playoff run, no doubt about it, because they're back in the playoffs, which is great. But beating the Leafs, I don't think is something that I can even think is a possibility. Oh, they got Allmark, right? They got the right goalie from Boston. I don't know if you remember, but years ago when the Maple Leafs had a choice between Justin Pogge and Tuukka Rask, they made the decision to keep Pogge,
Hmm.
and Rask went on to win a couple of Stanley Cups. Now it's interesting that the Bruins decided to go with Swayman, and here's Allmark with Ottawa, and basically he's the reason that they're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's a big factor for them. But you know, as I mentioned, they could surprise. But I mean, do you see them? Do you see them as a team that could knock out the Leafs?
Um, that's a tough question because at the end of the day, it is the Leafs, so anything could happen. But on paper, I don't think the Sens are a stronger team than the Leafs. They do have their star players in Tkachuk and Stützle and Batherson, and they have a strong defense core too. But yeah, again, it comes down to the goaltending, I think. And Allmark, he wasn't, he played a couple games against the Leafs in the playoffs last year, and he wasn't as good as Swayman. That's for sure. And Swayman was the guy who played in the game seven. But that's not to say Allmark isn't good. I believe that Allmark is still a good goalie. And yeah, I think that if the Sens were to make a run, or sorry, if there were an underdog team to make a run, I would probably end up choosing the Sens. They're a young team. I definitely feel like they could surprise some people. It's just the one thing that maybe they don't have is playoff experience. And the last time the Sens were in the playoffs, no roster players are left from that team. This is a whole new team. So again, they're young, and we'll just have to see what happens.
Okay, so the other team that we want to talk about are the Habs. Now, this is a team to me. This is a team that could come up with a surprise in round
Mhm.
one. The reason being, the Ovi watch, right? The Capitals have had an unbelievable season, but their season has been pretty much all around Ovi, right?
Yeah.
And now that the focus is on the playoffs, can they switch? Can they switch focus in time? Can they be focused the way they need to be? I mean, we're talking about a team that won the Stanley Cup not all that long ago, 2018, I believe it was. So they have some guys down there who are pretty scary. But you know, um, if I'm looking for an upset, I think this could be one. And wouldn't that be something, right? If the Habs were somehow able to get past the mighty Capitals, uh, which I think they could. I mean, Sam Montembeault, even though he wasn't a starting goaltender, didn't get a chance to play for Canada in the Four Nations Cup. He made the team, and I think making that team was probably good for his experience, good for his confidence, good for his And Dobush has got he's shown signs of brilliance when he's been in there. I mean, he was fantastic when they first brought him up. Um, Suzuki, he seems like a good leader. Caulfield is an incredible sniper. Hudson is a budding Quinn Hughes. I mean, only bigger. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's going to be your rookie of the year for sure. And Gallagher's a tough dude. Jake Evans is a tough dude. Josh Anderson is a tough dude. Um, they've got guys who can make you pay, and who will. So
Yep.
they've got a nice combination of skill and toughness that comes in handy come playoff time. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about this team that makes me think that, you know what, if there's going to be a stunning upset, this might be the one. What
Yeah.
about you? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I could agree with that for sure. I think if all the right pieces fall into place, then the Habs could definitely make a run. Yeah, like you said, The Caps will need to definitely shift their focus come playoff time. And you know they did make it last year, but they got absolutely embarrassed, and I'm sure that they're gonna want to definitely change that narrative this year. But the only issue that I have with the Habs is that I don't like I look at their roster and I don't see one superstar player who you can turn to just absolutely take over a game. Like, don't get me wrong, Suzuki, Caulfield, like Slavkovsky, like those are all great players, but
Hmm.
can you lean on, say, Caulfield when you're down one goal or it's a tie game? Can you go to him and say, we need a goal here? Is he that guy? Or are you gonna have to go for a group effort, whereas you turn to it's honestly it's kind of the same thing with the Capitals. Like, of course, Ovi's amazing, but at this point in his career, is he the guy that you're gonna look to go for a goal, or is it gonna be Dylan Strome? Like, who is it? Like, I feel like there's a lot of teams in the playoffs this year that are more built systematically rather than star player wise. And just going back to the Leafs, I feel like that could also be another outlier for them. Like, I feel like for sure after we've seen Marner play at the Four Nations, I feel like they can turn to him this playoffs and say,
Hmm.
"Hey, get us a goal here. We need it." So I think that's the only issue that I have with the Habs. Other than that, I could definitely see them being an upset team for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, Tom Wilson is always a factor come
Mm.
playoff time as well. As long as he doesn't get suspended for something stupid, but
Yeah.
he's going to be he's a tough guy to play against, really tough guy to play against. But I just yeah, I don't know, man, and I'm not sold on the Caps goaltending either. So
Yeah.
I think if there's an upset to be had there, I still think that's it. So. So okay, let's go into our predictions for how we see this unfold. As I mentioned, I think if they're looking for an upset, the biggest upset I think we might see is maybe Montreal gets out of the first round. Um, I think I think Toronto beats Ottawa, and I think providing they play Ottawa,
Hmm.
that's still not a given. But the way things are unfolding, that's the way it's looking. Winnipeg's going to. I think they'll get out of the first round. I don't think they make it to the Cup final though. I think we're going to see all Canadian Cup finals for the first time I think since 1989, Habs and Flames, and I think it's going to be the Oilers, and I think it's going to be the Leafs. And I think it's going to be an unbelievable Stanley Cup final. And I think the fact that the Oilers, got all the way there last year and came oh so close, losing it in the game seven after being down 3 games to none. I think this time they take it that one step further, and Connor McDavid does what he always wanted to do. He gets to skate around the ice with the Stanley Cup, beating the Leafs in 6 or 7 games. All right, what are you thinking?
Yeah. I last year I had the Oilers and Leafs in the finals. And I'm gonna go right back to it this year. I think like you said, like the Oilers, they got so close last year. And I don't see a world where Connor McDavid just takes no for an answer and he doesn't win a cup this year. And like the Oilers' depth is a lot better than we've seen in years past. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Oilers Leafs All-Canadian Cup Final. Unfortunately, I have the Oilers winning in seven to the Leafs and the Leafs dropping another game seven, but this time in the finals.
You know what though? I mean, listen, that's a dream final, and
Yeah,
if it went the other way, it would be fantastic. If the Leafs won, it
yeah,
would be fantastic. If the others won, it'd be fantastic. I don't think there's any loser here.
no,
Just for a great year for Canada in
yeah,
2025. I think that's what we're going to see, and I think we're both in agreement on that. All
yeah.
right, Joe Tilley here with Ross Granato with our playoff picks. Hope you enjoyed them. We'll see you next time.